To begin this section, we're going to speak about the superficial front line and the stomach meridian. Now, traditionally, the stomach meridian begins here under the eyes. It comes down to the corner of the mouth and then into the jaw, up to the top of the head, and then down to the SCM and the clavicle. So in the myofascial line model, the SCM is one of the primary muscles that are on this line. And from there, the SCM connects to the clavicle at the medial portion where the clavicle joins the sternum or the manubrium. Now there's fascia that connect at the lateral edges of the sternum, or the sternalis muscle is a part of this line, and the rectus abdominis is also a part of the superficial front line. Now traditionally there's some key stomach meridian points that are part of the stomach meridian or the superficial front line that are located next to the navel. So if you come out 2 cun or about 2 inches from the navel to the side, then this is a key point that we use for a variety of different digestive problems. So that point is known as stomach 25, and it is a key point for treating abdominal conditions. Now from there, the rectus abdominis attaches to the pelvis, and we've got the quads that are a part of the superficial front line, as well as the tibialis anterior. Now tibialis anterior is really interesting because it contains and is the location of the primary stomach meridian points like stomach 36, stomach 37, stomach 38, and stomach 40. And the way that we find stomach 36 is we go to the knee joint, the lateral aspect of it, and then we place our hands or our 4 fingers on the top of the joint, just below the patella. You'll find that little divot there at the bottom of the patella. You place your 4 fingers there on the edge of the bone, and that is 3 cun down, and then we go 1 cun or 1 thumb width over into the belly of the tibialis anterior muscle. Now, how we approach this in the Taiwanese system is we actually needle this point closer to the bone. So rather than needling it into the muscle, you can press here along the edge of the bone. Do you feel that? Mm-hmm. What point feels more sensitive to you? Does this one? Yeah. And right there, I can feel like a little bump, or when you palpate down a line like this, you may feel little bumps or little nodules where tension is being held within the myofascial system. So there's different things that we can do when we find points like that. We can put a needle in it if you're an acupuncturist, or if you're doing manual therapies or massage, you can press those points and then hold it is one method. And it's called an ischemic compression. And that means that you're cutting off the blood supply. And we want to hold it for 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Okay?
Interesting, my belly is
making
sounds.
Is it? So just by pressing that point, it makes some sounds. Yeah, it's very direct and quick effect, even with pressure. So you want to, when you're working with people, take note of when they say something like that, because a point here where there's a nodule or where there's some tension, it may induce a stronger reaction than another point on that line. Okay, I may not get a similar result if I come down here. But if I do an ischemic compression or some other type of myofascial release on those specific points where you're holding tension, then that can have a more pronounced effect on her imbalances, or on getting her digestion moving, or on numerous other systems that are related to that. Okay, so it's interesting that you feel something so quickly. So moving down this line, then, we come down to the tendons of the tibialis anterior. And we also have a few other major tendons here, which are the tendons of the extensor digitorum longus. So here we have tibialis anterior, which lifts the foot or dorsiflexes the foot up. Okay, so the tibialis anterior is the major muscle to dorsiflex or lift the foot. Now, to the side of tibialis anterior, you can feel the edge right there, is the muscle extensor digitorum longus. Now, extensor digitorum longus, it lifts the toes. Okay, so it extends the toes. Now, because these muscles are on that same line and associated with the stomach meridian, these points that are on the superficial front line will often have similar functions. So the points in the tibialis anterior, like stomach 36 and stomach 37 and stomach 40, these are widely known for benefiting digestion. But the points that are in the extensor digitorum longus are just lateral to that muscle. They can also benefit the digestion, and they can benefit the head and the face, much like traditional stomach meridian points. Okay? Now, when you're working with a client and you're doing acupressure, you can check all these lines. So now what I'm doing is I'm pressing down the edge of the tibia, and I can feel for tightness. Like right there feels a little more tight to me. Does that feel tight to you right there? Yeah.
I had a reaction.
Yeah, and I saw you flinch too.
Yeah.
So when you get those reactions, there's a few different things that you can do. You can do the hold and then ask them to breathe. That's always a nice thing to add to the treatment, is hold the point, and then typically you want to have people extend the breath and make it longer than the inhalation. So when you make your exhalation twice as long as your in-breath, that has a calming effect on your nervous system. It activates a parasympathetic response, which a lot of people need. So for clients that have stress-related symptoms, so for people that are stressed and they get digestive problems that are resulting from high stress levels, by having them increase the length of their exhalation and making it twice as long as the inhalation, that's going to calm their nervous system through the autonomic nervous system by inducing a parasympathetic response. Okay? Now, when I combine that with the manual therapy of just holding the point, then we're getting added benefits. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, other things that you can do, ischemic compressions aren't the only kind of therapy that you can do. In Thai massage, they don't typically hold points for very long. What they do is they'll move up and down the channels. And I think there's a lot of benefit in moving up and down the channels and keeping the flow moving. And in many ways, I prefer this technique because it's a much more systemic and holistic view. If I just go after a single point and I've put my focus there, I may miss the bigger picture. So Thai massage is really wonderful, and other forms of massage and Asian bodywork that have this big picture perspective where we're not just going to try to release it here and focus there for 5 or 10 minutes to try to get that to release. We're going to work that point in a more systemic way by moving through the channels and combining it with other points. Okay? So to get that flow, we can just go up and down the channel a few times. And even just by doing that, it's frequently the case that if I, say, go down the channel 3 times, a lot of times that tension will release and I don't even need to hold the point. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it's not necessarily that one's better than the other. These are just 2 different methods. We can hold points, and that can be tremendously effective. But we can also move up and down these lines, and that will also help to move the energy or to release the tension that's held in the fascia. Okay?
Does it matter which side you work on? Or do you usually work on both sides?
We can work on both sides, yeah. In Thai massage, they'll do both sides.
Sure.
Equally.
And when it comes to acupressure?
With acupressure, then I may not always do both sides.
Okay.
If I find that the tension's here, then I'll work this side more, perhaps on the leg. But then I may go over here to the arm and work that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different ways to work. It depends on what style you like. It depends on what's going on with the client. Some clients, and it may be more beneficial to do both sides. And I think there's a lot of value in that, especially if you're a massage therapist or some kind of body worker and you want to give them that holistic experience and go through all the channels. There's a real value in that. However, if you're trying to get a therapeutic result and you're less concerned about flow and having a nice, beautiful, relaxing sequence and a nice, beautiful, relaxing massage, then it can be more beneficial to go after those specific points that are going to produce the best result. Okay? All right, so I'm just going to demonstrate again how I can move down this channel. Now, this point here at the top of the ankle, where the big tendons are at, that point is known as stomach 41. And this is a really important acupuncture point. And when you're moving up and down these lines, then that's the landmark where we want to move to. Okay, so I just press down that line. Now I can go down that line again. You're going to want to pay attention to your overall flow and speed. If I'm assessing a line or a meridian, I may move through it fairly quickly at first, just to get a sense of where the tension's held. And then as I progress through it, or go down it the second or third time, I frequently want to slow it down. So you can count to 5 with each point. I'm going to move on to the tibialis anterior muscle at this point. So the first few times I went down it, I was at the edge of the bone. Now I can move on top of the tibialis anterior. And let's see if that also produces a response. There? Yeah. I can feel that. It's right.
It's right there. That point holds the most tension, I feel.
Even more so than the ones closer to the bone?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to hold that with moderate to heavy pressure for 30 seconds to 2 minutes and see if something releases there. And I'd invite you to close your eyes and go into your body, extending your exhalation and making it twice as long. If you do decide to hold a point, hold it for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then you can start to press down the line again. I like to press each point and count to 5. That's a good pace. I'm going to go to that stomach 41 point where you can feel the tendons on top of the ankle. Now, if we want to get really detailed with this, there's also another muscle. If we move laterally off the tibialis anterior, we get to the extensor digitorum longus, which is the muscle that extends the toes. So if you lift up on your toes, you want to go ahead and relax them now. I'm going to put my hand 3 sun down and then about 2 sun over from the tibialis anterior. You can roll off the tibialis anterior and onto extensor digitorum longus. Now, extend your toes, yeah, and you'll feel that muscle tighten through there. These points can also have a similar function to the stomach points. Feel that in your stomach? Yeah.
Feel tension.
Because the stomach meridian begins in the face and head, in acupuncture we also notice and observe powerful results for conditions like sinus congestion, headaches, these points up here in the extensor digitorum longus that are closer to the knee. Those points can be very effective for migraines and a variety of headaches, especially those that are in the forehead or the front of the eyes, or if it's a type of headache or migraine that's in the front of the face but also extends to the temples. These points in the extensor digitorum longus just below the knee, right through here, can be very good for that. We also use them for facial paralysis or anything that's going on in the head and the face where the front of the face is involved or the sides, or if it's between the two, so here and here. Another important thing to understand about this system, this is a Taiwanese system of acupuncture that I've been trained in. And this applies to acupressure and manual therapies as well, because of the way that the nervous system is laid out and connected to the body. So we use something called imaging in this practice, where we say that the hands and the feet, they image the head and the face. Because neurologically, you have a lot of nerve endings and a high concentration of nerves in your hands and in your feet both. So this high concentration of nerves allows your hands to have these incredibly detailed functions with the fingers and the movements, and it also makes them very sensitive. And in the somatocortex of your brain, or the homunculus, where you perceive sensation, the hands occupy a lot of brain space, or a lot of neurological space. Okay, so when we use points on the hands or the feet, that's causing a strong neurological reaction, and it's essentially lighting up the brain very powerfully. So this is a neurological explanation for why we use points on the hands and the feet for problems of the head and the face. Okay? And this point here, like LI4, is widely known for treating headaches, eye problems, even sinus problems, and even like paralysis in the face or Bell's palsy. So when you're working with points on the hands and the feet, understand that you're having a very powerful effect on the brain, the head, and the face. Okay? And there's some other points on the feet that are very powerful for headaches, and you can get a really good result with pressure alone. I've taught a lot of people how to use just pressure here in this point for getting rid of headaches, and oftentimes the results can be immediate. If we're thinking traditionally, the stomach meridian comes down the anterior part of the leg through the tibialis anterior. And we talked about stomach 41 being between the two tendons here. Traditionally, the stomach meridian is said to go from the point on top of the ankle down to the second toe. And this space here between the second and third metatarsals are some really important points that are connected to the stomach meridian in the way that we think of it traditionally. So right here at the junction, or the V, of these long bones, the metatarsals in the feet, there's a point known as stomach 43 in the traditional TCM systems, or known as 66.05 in the Taiwanese system. So this point right there, so if I equate my hands to my feet, this would be my big toe. And we do this in the Taiwanese system. We say that the thumb mirrors the big toe, and then the index finger mirrors the second toe. So if I go to this space between the second and third digits, okay, so right here where these long bones meet, or actually it would be up here on the hand, okay, if I go to that space where the metatarsals meet on top of the foot, that's stomach 43 or 66.05. And this point located there can be tremendously effective for not only headaches and conditions of the head and the face, but because it's on the stomach meridian, it's also very powerful for digestive problems or food allergies, menstrual problems as well. Anything that's going on in the digestive system or the reproductive system, this point right here can be tremendously effective and very fast working. And the reason it can work so fast is because it has such an immediate effect up here on the higher centers in the brain. How's that point feel to you? Really sensitive there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can feel how powerful it is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How do you feel that?
Just the energy all
Yeah.
the way up my leg,
Oh, yeah, you feel...
my torso.
Uh-huh. Yeah, great. And that's the type of reaction that you're looking for when you're working with people. If you press one of these points and they say that they felt it move up their leg and into their abdomen, then that's a good point to hold for some time, or you can provide the flow of movement by going up and down. But typically when they say that, you may also notice that there's a nodule or some tightness or a little bump in that area. If that's the case, I'm most likely going to hold it. And you may notice that move a little bit. To me, it felt like that first point released, and then it felt like it moved down towards the toes a little bit more.
Yeah, there's sensitivity.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once again, you can ask the client to go inward, close their eyes, breathe deep, extend the exhalation to get that parasympathetic response. If you're ever holding a point and a client complains that it's painful, there's a couple things you can do. First, release the pressure so that it's not so strong, or you can just move up and down the line and not dig into that point. Some forms of body work and therapy, they want to dig into that point, and that can be counterproductive, and people don't often like that. They don't want to be in pain. But you can get a really profound release by continuing to move up and down the line rather than just trying to jam into a point all the time. And some people will respond differently. Like, I'm a person that personally responds better when people move through the system rather than try to dig in. Like, if someone tries to press too hard into areas where I hold tension, I tighten up, and then that doesn't help. And a lot of people will do that. But if you approach it with grace and ease and move up and down the lines, then that can be very relaxing and calming and help them to release rather than hold. And when I say moving up and down the line, you don't necessarily have to go back up to the leg. You can simply go back to stomach 41 and then press down that line.